Hey Alexis,
Hey,
did you know that the kakapo is an endangered parrot in New Zealand and is the world's only flightless parrot?
a flightless parrot?
Yeah.
It can't fly. It just like waddles around.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's
Or just like
cute.
hops to branch. Or like I
Yeah.
don't know. Maybe there's a form of like gliding that it can use
Yeah.
at a time.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, dun dun dun, there's a little bit less than 200 individuals
Oh,
left in the wild. They're listed as endangered on the IUCN Red List.
oh, that's sad.
Yeah. Well, hey everyone.
Hey guys.
We're Green Thread. I'm Allie,
And I'm Alexis.
and we're here to pull at the strands of climate, conservation, and all the choices we make every day that can impact our environment. If you are listening audibly, you didn't hear our little scoop in the very beginning, but if you listened or saw us visually, then you did. And where that ties into our conversation for today is endangered species. Now, people often are like, okay, well, I've heard that term, but I've never understood how do species become endangered?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a bit of a loaded question. There's a lot of different factors that can play a part into what can cause a population to decline rapidly or, rapid. I don't want to say rapidly, but at a fault, but to the point where it becomes unsustainable at that point. But a few different things that I know of off the top of my head is like habitat loss, habitat fragmentation,
Mm-hmm.
even just like climate change in general, like all these environmental factors, and then one that people don't often talk about enough: invasive species.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a balance that we've talked about in nature and how it always wants to be at equilibrium, but the sometimes that equilibrium does get faltered by things that are already naturally in the environment, but well, maybe not naturally in the form that you're thinking, but like naturally in the form of it's not a human,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still something that's impacting like the amount of a species population.
For sure. And like you were saying, something naturally can happen like with invasive species, but most of the causes of endangered species I feel like are at the fault of humans, whether it's directly or indirectly, whether you are directly destroying a habitat or if it's being caused by climate change. Things like climate change, I mean, that causes a huge domino effect. So there's a ton of different effects that happen that we don't necessarily have our hand in right there that directly affects it at that moment. But there's so much that is lost from climate change and human destruction and, things like that. I mean, we're in the Anthropocene, it's the age of the humans.
Right.
We're human centered, human focused. A lot of sustainability efforts are focused on more on the sustainability of humans living longer and having the
Mm-hmm.
planet for ourselves versus animals, wildlife, plants, everything based on the environment.
Exactly. And I saw this post the other day, speaking of that, that it was talking about how there's some species that have been extinct for years and we just like it's in one ear out the other and we
Mm-hmm.
forget about them. And like oftentimes that creates this like negative loop of okay, well how do we go about helping something that we totally just forgot about
Mm-hmm.
and all reality.
Yeah.
And some species that maybe you are familiar with have seen from like a zoo or aquarium or even just like any other conservation program, um, like orangutans, gorillas, western lowland gorillas specifically. And there's a couple of like pangolins. Oh my god,
Mm-hmm.
I forgot about pangolins until I saw like a movie recently that had like a CGI pangolin and I was like, "Oh my god."
Yeah.
And then blue whales. There's one that I know of that a lot of people maybe have heard the name of a couple times but not like truly really known much about. They're called vaquitas and they're like dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like maybe 46 left, which is
Mm.
wild.
Yeah.
But they suffer the same consequences as a lot of sharks and whales and other aquatic species that tend to get like overfished or caught in
Mm-hmm.
lines. And that's why, like, back to our previous episode about zoos and aquariums and other like wildlife programs, they're so important. And I know I mentioned species survival plans
Mm-hmm.
in that episode, and this is where that ties in to like wildlife is like through making sure that species like this that are declining rapidly and at a rate that we cannot substantiate like making sure that they survive,
Mm-hmm.
this is a way that we can protect them and to hopefully preserve, if not the species, their genes for future generations.
Absolutely. And speaking of preserving their genes, I know there's a few species that has been done with, and I know we had talked a little bit before this about it off air. But the black-footed ferret is one
Mm.
that they had frozen their genes. They had actually been declared extinct twice
Wow.
before being found again. I'm not sure exactly how they were found again. I believe they just found some in the wild just unexpectedly.
Mm-hmm.
And there's seven like founders
Mm-hmm.
of the continuation of the species now because they had to take their DNA and their DNA and freeze it, or their cells and freeze them, and they're basically cloning them now, which is really cool. It sounds super cool. Or like cloning animals and stuff. Um, but yeah, it's such a slow process too, though, because the fact that we even have to get to this point of freezing cells and freezing DNA to bring something back because it's been so destroyed and it's declined so much is it's really upsetting. It's sad. It's frustrating.
I know. When you were talking about like freezing DNA and like bringing things back, I immediately just had the Jurassic Park theme song in my
Yeah.
head. Though.
Oh wait, I'm wearing the perfect shirt for that. It's the
Yay,
Wyoming Dinosaur
dinos!
Center. Anyways,
Dinos. But I know like not only has black-footed ferret been a good trial for that, but also northern white rhinos and southern
hmm
white rhinos have both been thought to be extinct at one point and are now like doing a little bit better, not completely because of some like gender
hmm
situations in the last remaining individuals, but it just attests to how much technology has advanced
yeah.
to like kind of positively impact our world. And I also think it's a matter of like we forget how big the world is.
Yeah.
Like there are so many different species that we probably think are extinct right now that aren't.
hmm
They're just chilling somewhere out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, with invasive species, it's just the way that technology and society, just everything has evolved in the past even 50 years just with travel. I mean, you could have animals across the world come to the United States or vice versa, and
Mm-hmm.
just animals traveling. I wonder about that, and I wonder about just how invasive species are doing across the world. And I wonder if new things are being created, or I wonder all the time about species that we don't know about too, because especially in the ocean. The
Yes.
ocean is so unexplored. It's fascinating
Yeah.
because we have no idea what could be at the depths of the ocean all over the world. We have no clue, and it's so fascinating, which that's really off topic. But
You're good. Yeah, there's like always like new news articles about newly discovered species in the
yeah.
ocean.
Yeah, which is wild because it's like, okay, it's impossible to kind of keep track without a lot of people doing work everywhere. It's impossible to keep track of every single organism all across the world.
Yeah.
And that's how I think some slip through the cracks as well, is just because we don't have the resources to study that many organisms at one time. It's almost impossible. They outnumber us by far, just wildlife in general, of course. There's much more wildlife than
Yeah.
just humans.
Yeah. There was a Wildlife Wednesday post, which if you don't know what we're talking about, our Instagram is our news page where we try to keep
hmm
up with all the climate news and let y'all know. We also try to use hopeful information by doing a Wildlife Wednesday, where we go through and find different like species of wildlife that maybe have some positive news.
hmm
And there was one that I posted a couple of weeks ago about a species of large I think millipede or
Okay.
giant millipede.
hmm
They on one of their recent like discoveries or expeditions, I think it was a couple of years ago, they found a new species of giant millipede that they had never seen before, along with some other fish they had never found before, and I think some other insects. But it was things like that where I'm like, wow, there are some things we just don't know are
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah, our world is huge. And one way to kind of, this all sounds very large scale and
Mm-hmm.
very much it's hard to keep up with as anyone, even as scientists. It's hard to keep up with what's endangered, what's not, what's extinct now, what is coming back now. So I believe the World Wildlife Organization or the World Wildlife Fund has a list of endangered species. It's funny, actually, I was recently doing some research on green sea turtles for another class, and they're endangered, and a lot of that's due to plastics and, more human caused reasons. But to kind of stay informed about, I almost said invasive, endangered species is to, do your research and look at that list. And that list is being changed, all the time with things going on the list, things coming off the list. A good success story is the black-footed ferret, like I mentioned earlier. And I believe there's the bald eagle. I believe that
Yes.
was also a great success story. And I actually had the privilege of seeing one in person this past summer in Wyoming. Lots of Wyoming mentions today, but it was really awesome to see that like in real life. Like, wow, this was at one point almost thought to be impossible to see this in real life, and I'm seeing it with it's beautiful. It's awesome.
Yeah, which actually, going off of that, this so we usually use Georgia Highlands for our podcast studio. So shout out to them. But so this is going to be more like towards the school. But if you're ever on Floyd campus,
Hmm.
they do have some eagles that live on
Oh,
campus, and I've seen a couple when we were doing some like field work studies and
yeah.
things, and it was just so cool. Like I got a couple snapshots on my camera, and I'm like, wow. There's this like, well, I mean, I guess I was also like used to it by the zoo because we did
Hmm.
have a bald
Oh
eagle
yeah.
there, but which rip, I miss you, Sequoia, you were amazing. But it was really cool to see them like in just the wild, like chilling up in the trees and having
Yeah.
having a grand old time. But I mean, back to dinosaurs, I mean, the fact that birds are living dinosaurs,
Yeah.
you can tell that they're gonna outlive
Oh,
everything.
absolutely. It's so fascinating to study how different species can bounce back to like even
Mm-hmm.
just, birds are literally living dinosaurs, and it's wild to think about how even though, it's not the exact same as dinosaurs, just a
Yeah.
lineage of these traits and these certain things that have descended from species in the past. So awesome.
Yep. And I mean, like, not only can species bounce back on their own, but you can also support like programs and organizations that use their mission statement to support endangered species. A couple off the top of my list here: Jane Goodall Institute. We all
Mm-hmm.
know good old Jane Goodall.
Yeah.
She has a whole program, as well as the National Audubon Society. Speaking of birds,
Mm-hmm.
Nature Conservancy,
Yeah.
Wildlife Conservation Society, which is super easy for the public to get involved with, like with their magazines, with their newsletters and things like that. So have weekly news. And then we were talking about World Wildlife Fund,
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of different places, and not only like places that are wanting donations, but just like are here for education purposes. And that's like we always talk about it being the main point of our podcast, but it
Mm-hmm.
generally is just staying informed and making sure that you are pulling on that green thread, as they say.
Yeah, keep pulling on it, keep unraveling it, and see what happens, and stay informed and stay educated.
Yep. Keep up with our news page. Keep up with our videos if you would rather do a video, but just keep keep being part of the Green Thread family. We have an entire link tree full of different ways and resources that you can use to be informed, to stay in that mindset. But until then, we'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time.